Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to School Matters with me, Sumaya Khan. Alhamdulillah, we all are in our first term. We are safe and well. Always be grateful for what we have. May the Almighty grant ease for those who are distressed. Well, what is a school governing body? The school governing body, SGB, is a statutory body of parents, educators, non-teaching staffs, and who seek to work together to promote the well-being and effectiveness of school community and thereby enhance learning and teaching. Well, Section 20 of the South African School Act 84 of 1996, as amended, determines various functions applicable to all SGB school governing bodies, may also request additional functions as listed in Section 21 of the South African Schools Act from, the head of department. The provincial minister of education may also confer these additional functions listed in Section 21 of the South African Schools Act, but we're not dealing too much about the Schools Act. Upon schools, if he or she, so determines and is satisfied that the SGB, has to have the capacity to perform such functions effectively. While the governing body elections are to take place, that is what our main concern is. For parents out there who require clarity of what does your role entail, who are the participants, what are the functions of the SGB, can you have a say in running of the school if you are on the SGB, how are the elections conducted? Well, I think for lots of parents, they fear being on the school SGB because they don't know what their role entail, and even educators are not familiar with this. What is their role as educator reps? Our guest in studio this evening is Mr. V. Gani, the chairman of KZN Parents Association. Well, he's going to take us through, briefly about everything, but the main concern is the SPG elections, which will be taking place very soon. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to School Matters.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me, Samir.
Thank you for being here in your busy day.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, no, it's good. I believe that we have a duty and a responsibility to educate and empower our people. Although there's lots of information out there, be it on social media, be it in legislation, be it in policy. The thing is, it doesn't beat this one-on-one kind of interaction when you use a platform of radio, and also where you can answer some questions. People may have questions related to governing bodies and the operation and all of that. So, look, I think we'll start. I think we'll start off basically with what is a school governing body. So normally people know it as the SGB. When people say the SGB. What is the role of the school? What is the school governing body? So let me give you a breakdown of that, because then people understand. So firstly, it's a statutory body, which means that it's enshrined in law. It's a body that exists in law. It's a juristic body, which means it's got legal implications and repercussions to it as well. So that's the way it is. What the governing body comprises of, there's different components onto a governing body. So you'll get parents that are on the governing body, you'll get the principal that's on the governing body, you'll get the educator reps on the governing body. So what happens is the educators will have a meeting, and at the meeting they will elect reps to represent them and their concerns at a governing body platform. So let's call that the platform, right? The school governing body, that's a platform. And then you also get the non-educator reps. So you get the clerks in school, the bursar, the admin clerk, the security guard, whoever is in the school that's not an educator will now form part of what you call the non-educator component. They will also do the same. They will have a meeting. And remember now, the elections are happening from the 1st to the 31st of March. So this is next month, practically in just over 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So these non-educator reps will also elect a person or persons to represent them onto the governing body. So now you've got the parents, you've got the principal, you've got the educator reps, you've got the non-educator reps, And then also in a secondary school or a high school, you also get the learners. Right? Where the learners themselves will also elect members to represent them at a governing body level. So that in essence is what comprises of your governing body. Now the next step is, what is the duty? What does a governing body do? What are they supposed to do? What is it? You got them there. Now you've elected this body. Now somebody who's been elected for the first time will come and sit in there and like, okay, what do we do? What is our role function? What are we supposed to do? In essence, your governing body controls the functionality of a school. Right? So I'm using one big word, but it encompasses everything. So your governing body ensures the functionality of a school, which technically means that as a governing body, you are responsible to ensure that the school is functional, that all the moving parts are working, that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing, all right? That education is taking place, learning, we call it learning and teaching, right? So learning and teaching is taking place. That in essence is what it is. The governing body also controls the finances of the school. So for example, parents would pay in school fee.
Yeah.
It's the governing body that manages that account. Now, just recently I've got, I would put it as complaints where the principal is saying, no, I'm responsible for the monies and I'm not paying this person, I'm not doing this. You can't do that because as a principal, he is still an ordinary member of the governing body. You don't have any special powers. Just as much as the governing body and the parents are answerable to the parents, the principal is answerable to the education department. But the principal doesn't control the finances. The governing body controls it. The principal is part of that process. Okay? So, as a governing body, you'll control the finances. This is what you have to do. Now, you have to make sure you collect school fees. You have to make sure you have a policy in there that will exempt certain people, either partial or a full exemption. You have a policy that does that. You are managing the monies correctly. You are not conducting wasteful expenditure. You are ensuring that the monies that you are paying or the monies that you are managing is going towards the betterment and the development and the upliftment of education. Right? So some governing bodies would pay governing body educators. Why? Because as a school you don't have enough educators. You have to then hire, you have to employ what they call now SGB educators, the educators employed by the school governing body. You have to pay them. So this is all falls under your finance.
Yeah.
So there's two mandatory, there are two committees that must be within a governing body. So when you get your governing body, and there's numbers from the governing body will stretch from 9 to 18, 21, it'll go on, like depending on how many parents you have and how many children you have in our school. And what happens is these people will then manage that process. So the principal, together with the governing board, will ensure that they are spending the money wisely, they're collecting school funds, they're managing their account properly, they are able to pay for resources. School governing body educators, they're able to afford and pay for them as well.
Yeah.
So you need to pay your school fee because that's where the money comes out from. Now, parents always complain and they're like, oh, you know what, they're worrying me for the school fee, and I can't afford it, I can't do this and I can't do that. Now, I understand it completely because unemployment is at an all-time high. A lot of children are on either child support grants. A lot of parents some of them are on child support grants. So as a result, you find that the income is low. And because of that, they are unable sometimes to afford to pay the school fee. But you have to engage with the school because sometimes you might be eligible for a full exemption, sometimes you're eligible for a partial exemption. But every parent has to make that effort to pay the school fee because remember what you're getting and what a government school is getting from the department is the subsistence or the subsidy that they call it, the allowance that they get is not a huge amount. And there's lots that go into a school itself. So I know you had some questions, so we'll get into the questions, right?
We have quite a few questions which are coming from principals and parents. There's a long question here, but a lot of parents still fear the principal. They still think that the principal controls and rules everything, and they just go with the flow concerning maintenance, concerning missions and ethos, concerning promotions, concerning decisions, financial decisions. And this is quite common. And I think why this also leads to it, because the parents who are sitting there, the individuals, even the teacher reps, they don't know entirely what is their rights and what they can do and what they cannot do.
Right.
So very few schools tend to workshop the governing bodies when they're elected, the parent components. I know department was doing it, but I don't know whether every school attended. So it's so important for them to be workshopped, parents.
Absolutely.
And be guided.
Absolutely. You know, when you're sitting in a committee, let's say you got elected and this is your first time that you are sitting on a school governing body. It's not a difficult process. It's not a scary process. But you have to equip yourself with at least some kind of knowledge. And if you're going to wait for either the principal to capacitate you or the department to capacitate you, that might take forever.
Yeah.
But there are other, like there's a school conduct, the code of conduct for governing bodies. So there are other forms of information and education that you can get, where it teaches you what is the role of a governing body, what is your role as a member of the governing body, what is the role of the chairperson, what is the role of the secretary, what is the role of the treasurer, what is the role of the vice chair, what are the role of the other
and
members.
it's so important, like there's the phones messages are just going on, but it's so important when you are holding those positions. It's not only a title, you need to know what.
Yeah, but look, and I'll answer your question earlier where you said it is true that some principals think that they control everything. Okay, and they are responsible and they are the decision makers. No, you're not. Okay, as a principal, you're not a decision maker. The only time that you can make a decision with your SMT is regarding the academia of a school, the academics, the curriculum, that kind of thing. Okay, but every other thing is done on a consultative process, which means that it goes via a governing body. All right, so you have to consult with your governing body. Now, some principals, and not all of them, but some principals have this misconception that they control, they're responsible, they're the decision makers, and they can stop a payment, they can make a payment, and that doesn't happen. There are procedures and there are laws in which certain things have to happen. It has to be consultative. It has to be a consultative process. More than that, it has to be where decisions, and especially those that impact on finances and big decisions, would have to go via the platform of your governing body, because that's the decision making authority. And if a governing body decides on something and it's minuted and this is what it is and it's reached by consensus, as a principal you can't go and do the contrary, because it's you've taken a decision at a platform where those types of decisions are made. And if you come outside that meeting and then you do something that's contrary to that, you could be charged for misconduct.
And there's another message which is on the screen here. Sometimes principals think they have their governing bodies with them, and whatever goes, they'll go ahead. They do go ahead, but they tend to talk. They tend to talk out of that, whether they go to the department or they discuss issues with educators, because they fear the principal, and you are really
right.
involved in this.
You are right in a way. I mean, look, they are members of the governing body that could become intimidated by the principal, and purely for the reason that the principal is in a position of power. He's the head of the school, he's the head of the institution. Whatever he says, you take it as being gospel, you take it as being the truth, because the principal has no reason to lie to you or manipulate you. But it does happen. And sometimes people don't know. So when governing bodies go into schools, they sit there as just rubber stamping authorities. They just sit there and the principal say, well, I've paid this person, I've done this, I've done that, and then they just sign off on it. They don't realize that, no, hang on a second. Before you make any monetary decisions, there's a process. it has to go via the governing body.
Yeah.
Before you make any decisions regarding the school. Like, I always talk about this one particular case. It's not a case, it's an example. If a window in the classroom is broken, the principal's not there. Principal's gone for a meeting. Principal's not there. And suddenly he comes back and a window of the classroom is broken. Who do you think is answerable for that? Who do you think?
Well, the teacher generally will have to give a report what happened.
Right. So ultimately, the principal has to answer. So even though he may not have been in school, it's his responsibility to investigate what happened, how it happened, formulate a report and answer to the governing body. This is what happened.
But
So
do they do that?
Well, I don't control principals, so I can't answer.
That's a question.
So here's the thing, right? So the principal is the accounting officer, which means he's accountable to the department. Just as much as the parents whom are elected onto the governing body. So your governing body parent members are accountable to the parents. It's the same formula, right? The principals are... So as a principal, you have to make sure that there's no corruption, there's no fraud, we are doing correct payments, the legislation is being followed, the processes are being followed, we're sitting in the governing body and the finances are intact, payments are being made accordingly, we've got the relevant invoices in, we've got all of that. That's your job.
Yeah.
Your job, and if for whatever reason, if somebody in the governing body is saying, no, listen, we've got this contract, and I want to give it to my cousin.
That happens.
Just
don't say you're my cousin.
No, but what I'm saying is, as a principal, you say, no, hang on a second, guys. We have to, depending on the nature and the scope of the job, we have to advertise it. We get in quotes that come in. People must then tender for that. We'll have a look at that. We'll narrow it down. If we got more than 3 quotes, we'll narrow it down. Remember also, it's not always you take the cheapest quote, because sometimes the cheapest quote is
Labor
not
is terrible.
necessarily the quality of work that you would require. So it's obvious. So you always have, and I've used this word before, I'll use it again. There's always a consultation because you want what's best practice for the school.
Yeah.
That's what you want. And I say to governing body members, I said, look, your term of office is 3 years. The last time we had elections, 2021, their term of office expires now in the month of March. And therefore, we're going to have elections throughout the country in March. And then that will go on for the next 3 years, which will go on until 2027. Scary thought, but it's around the corner, basically, right? So you are elected for a period of 3 years, all right? So when you get elected in March of this year, then you are elected onto the governing body for a period of 3 years. Now, let me explain that concept, all right? If you get elected onto the governing body and your period is 3 years, but you have a child in that school and the child is in grade 7 this year, it means that technically you'll only serve 1 year on the governing body, because you have to be a parent, or there's some legal framework around that. I won't go into too much of detail, but you have to be a bona fide parent, or you have to be a legal guardian, or you have to fulfill the criterion of being a guardian. And then that allows you to be a member of the governing body. If you've got a child in grade 6, for example, who's going to be exiting the school in grade 7, right? Then you would be this year, which is 2024, 2025, the moment your child leaves the school, you cease to become a member of the governing body. So some people, depending on the nature of what grade your child is in, right, or children are in that school, you may have a child in grade 7 this year, but you also got a child in grade 3. So the grade 7 will come off. If you're elected on the governing body, you still have a child in grade 3, which means you continue your stint at the governing body, because the prerequisite is what? You must have a kid in the school. And if you've got a kid in the school, then you fulfill the criteria. So I'm saying that when you get elected for a period of 3 years, maximum, right? Depending on the nature of where your children are in the school, you can. Like if you get in a high school, secondary school, if your kid is in grade 11, and you feel that you need to make an... Now, this is not stopping anybody, because you can have a child in grade 12 and you can still stand for elections. Nothing precludes you from doing that, right? But all I'm saying is that if you get elected, you're going to serve only a year. Because the moment your child leaves, your status as a governing body member finishes.
Mr. V. Gani. He's the chairperson for the Governing Body Association of KZN. Well, he's the best person to tell us, you know, the bad, the good, the evil, all that happens, because I know when there's issues, you're always there to address it. I mean, you address it with departments, with unions, on macro level, national levels. So, governing body elections will be taking place very soon. Parents don't know what it entails being on the governing body. You were explaining that to us. Even teacher reps don't know. A lot of people have the misconception, I'm there just to be the principal's puppets, or I'm just there and I don't want to ruffle feathers. Am I doing the right thing? Is the principal doing the right thing? Are the members of the governing body not doing the right thing? From all aspects concerning finance, post, functionality, ethos, mission, vision, everything. So you were talking about, before we went, you said you're going to answer some questions, which we have. Amazingly, we have many, many principals who are posting questions this evening.
Okay, so you can shoot with the questions. I'll try to answer them as best as I can.
Okay, right. So these questions here, which I have. Okay, why are principals held accountable? That's the SGB do not perform duties. Meetings are not called up. There's no quota. SGB portfolio holders are absent, and subcommittees, example SSC, LTSM, finance, do not schedule meetings. So why are the principals responsible or accountable for this?
It's the responsibility of the principal to capacitate a governing body. Okay, when I say capacitate, I mean to get them knowledgeable, to give them the information, to capacitate and empower them. That's the principal's job. I mean, you work for the Department of Education. If you're a principal and you don't know the very basics of governance, you shouldn't be a principal. It's as simple as that. Okay, so principals are supposed to empower and educate and develop their governing bodies. So that's why you become accountable, is because it's your job. And your job is to advise them correctly, not incorrectly, correctly. Give them the information. I mean, there's so much of information out there. Give them the information. Make it accessible to them. Educate, empower. Because the more you do that, the better or the more functional your school would be. Because then everybody will understand what their roles are, what their responsibilities are, what their rights are, what their recourses are.
And there's another question from an educator here. Somebody who's been teaching for 36 years. Principals, managers tend to look for the educators as teacher reps, so they will keep quiet about teachers' grievances and issues within that place. What advice do you have for those educators? Well, that's quite common.
Look,
caucusing.
Look, I think firstly, educators have it's a democratic right for them to have a vote and to vote representatives onto the governing body. It's their democratic right to do so. So that would happen. And of course, when they have issues, they have to then articulate those issues through their reps, who will then raise it at the SGB level. If for whatever reason, because remember now, let me put it this way, right? Let's say you're an educator, you're not on the governing body, but for some odd reason, your class windows are broken. For whatever reason. And you've raised that through your teacher reps to say, look, please talk to the governing body, whether they can look at the replacement of windows in my class. It's a bit dangerous. There's glass around. I'm just giving you a silly example, but a practical one. Then what happens? Your teacher rep is then... So normally they would meet you. Normally your reps would meet you before a governing body meeting. So your teacher reps would meet with the rest of the staff before a governing body meeting to take matters. So you're looking for a mandate. All right? Then they'll sit at governing body and then they'll present the case to say, look, we have this issue, that issue. And, the educator was asking, and whatever the case may be. And the governing body will then articulate what their response is. That person who's representing you as an educator rep on the governing body, will have to come back for feedback, because you have to give, after governing body meeting, feedback to the rest of the staff. So that's how that process works. Okay? If that person that you've elected is not carrying that mandate of the staff, then the staff has to then re-elect. Basically inform the person, look, we are not happy with you because we are asking you to articulate certain concerns that we have, and we've mandated you to represent us, but you're not representing us. And they can have another meeting and they can re-elect. They can do that. Because if you elected but you're not performing, your constituency can withdraw you.
Exactly. Our next question, the question is concerning governance. Governance, explain what is the actual role of SGB members, right?
Okay, I think I covered it a little bit there, that you are basically responsible for the functionality of a school. And you have to ensure that the school is running. You have to ensure that the parts that are moving, the education is happening, teachers are in the classrooms. They're doing, when I say governing body, I'm not talking about parents, I'm talking about the entire governing body. The educators are in the classroom, they are teaching, the children are behaved, the school rules are being followed, the finances are being taken care of, the infrastructure in terms of the school, the plant is running. If there's any issues, that the governing body, through its maintenance committee or through its buildings committee or whatever it is that they call it, people have different names for these things, they are then, that those matters are being attended to. That is your function. Your function is to ensure that the finances are being well spent, that you have finances, that you are managing it correctly in accordance with the Public Finance Management Act. You're doing that. The mere fact that education is taking place, then you won't have a problem.
Another question, this is from an educator from Phoenix. Advice, Mr. Gani, enjoy listening to you on Radio Hindivani. Where are you? I'm not there anymore. Who is responsible for the school? Is it the governing body or the principal? And as educators, do we have transparency of what is being carried out in the school?
Okay, so let me answer the last question first, right? There must always be transparency. And the reason for that is because if you're operating at a governing body level, you got your teacher reps that are there. Remember what I just said a minute ago?
So the teacher reps are so important.
Very important, because they will inform their constituencies as to what's happening in the school, because ultimately it will affect them. If we have a development in discipline, for example, the educators need to know. So you have to inform them, but your teacher reps would do that. It's a little bit difficult for the parent reps to do that with all the parents, and the reason for that is because you have big numbers. So you can't, before every governing body meeting, call all those parents and take a mandate from them. What are your issues? Then go into the governing body meeting and then come back. You can't do that because the numbers are too big. So that is why parents are elected. So those people that sit as parents on the governing body, you are representing all these other parents. So when you do get any complaints or concerns from them, either directed through to you as a governing body or via the school, you would engage with it at the platform of the governing body. Right. The first part of the question I forgot. You got to tell me. Ask me again.
Well, there's a whole lot of questions, so let's try to do all. Well, I think the next question is from a principal. Why is the principal held responsible for poor decisions of the SGB by Department of Basic Education, as principal is outvoted?
Okay. So here's the thing, right? When you say poor decisions, you have to examine what is a poor decision. Because, for example, now, right, if we've got, let's say, 30,000 rand in the bank, and the governing body is now saying, let's take 25,000 rand and have a team building function. That's going to leave you with 5,000 rand in the bank. That's going to be a poor decision to invest on something that is not absolutely necessary, right? As a principal, you are accountable to the Department of Education, because if something goes wrong,
you are the custodian.
You are the custodian, right? But if it's a poor decision and you're being outvoted, if it's a legal decision, then you can't be held accountable if it's a legal decision.
Exactly.
But if it's a decision that is taken by the governing body that is in conflict with the Act, or a decision that's taken by the governing body which is detrimental to the school, you can voice your objection
Yeah.
You can have it on record, okay? And if you feel that the governing body is taking a decision that is contradictory or contrary to the ethos of the school in some way, form or manner, you can inform your immediate superior, which is your SEM, to come in and have a chat with the governing body, because ultimately you are responsible.
And
but you're not a decision maker, and I understand that, but you're responsible.
Yeah.
And if a decision is wrong, you are now saying that I have no part in this decision, I don't want to, I'm informing this governing body, but you're doing it on a legal platform.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, the next question. Why is the principal held responsible for poor... Okay, we discussed that one. The next one. What is the SGB role in collecting school fees, general fund raising?
That's one of the primary functions of a school governing body.
So, a lot of educators, this message is an educator from Hartley Road. Who is responsible for fundraising? Is it the school teachers or the governing body? As many ex-Model schools and private schools, they get the governing body, as in Mum's committee and other committees of parents component, to raise funds as they have enough time on their hands. And as educators, we still do it, but teaching and learning is also at stake there. So, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, very good question. So essentially, your governing body is responsible for the finances of the school. That's what it is. That's what the Act says. All right? To be more precise, it says a governing body opens and maintains a school bank account.
Okay.
That line is telling you that they are responsible for the finances. Here's the thing, though, right? Is that so your governing body is to ensure that your school fees are being paid, because I think you asked that question, right? Your school fees are being paid, because they also have the mandate in which to grant exceptions to that and exemptions by virtue of exemptions, right? So your governing body will have to go through that process and see, okay, we've got 200 children in the school, there's 15 of them that applied for exemptions. As a governing body, we'd have to then go through the 15 applications. We have to then kind of examine it to see whether there's authenticity in it. We'll have to examine to see whether it's a worthy case, a deserving case, or whether somebody's just like not paying. So you have that fiduciary responsibility, right?
There's quite
Now, coming back to what you said just very quickly about the fundraising part of it. Look, all schools struggle for funds.
Yeah.
And it's a bit difficult because sometimes the governing bodies they hold these, and I know they call them the proms, the Debs balls, the this, the that. In school, they'll have the cake sales, this and that. And educators form part of that, because remember, you're a governing body. So as an educator, you can also be part of the fundraising committee, okay? The whole idea is what? Is to work together. Now, we understand that educators have a mammoth task, and that is ensuring that teaching and learning is taking place, But where they can assist, they must, or they should. And governing bodies also, the members that are there, could also request for external help. They could go out into the community and co-opt other people onto a fundraising committee, which will be like a subcommittee of the governing body. They can do that.
Yeah. This has always been a debate. I know throughout my teaching, why should teachers do all the work? Where is the governing body?
Well, you shouldn't, but let me give you an example, right? And I'm not going to be coy or funny about it. I'm going to tell you. Part of what schools pay is what? SGB educators. Am I correct?
All different salaries, but some of them are really low.
Right. But what I'm saying is, they do, right? Who do you think those SGB educators are assisting in the school?
The educators.
And I'll tell you why. Because ordinarily, in terms of the Department of Education, you'd be sitting with 60, 70 children in your class based on the number of educators that you are allowed to have based on your PPN, your post-provisioning norm, based on the formula that the department is in. It's one simple formula, but it's there. So at the end of the day, if you are now getting the relief by teaching a lower number of kids, if not, you're going to be sitting with 70 in your class.
That's true.
So you're getting another educator to come in and share the load. So when you've got SGB educators in your school, they're sharing the load. And if they're sharing the load, it's making it a bit lighter on the educators.
The next question is something which all principals really, really battle, and lots of people find this so unfair.
Well, there you go.
The arrogance, ego.
No, I'm kidding.
Why are SGB marginalized when it comes to appointments of level 1 educators, grade R of schools? You know, there are so many grade R educators who are qualified and they're not absorbed in that school. This is something which has been going on and on the saga.
Just repeat. I'm trying to get the
so, like, why are SGB marginalized when it comes to appointment of level 1 educators or even grade Rs? So, for instance, you are an SGB educator. Generally, I know back in the day, on performance and service as a SGB, generally principals would make a plan to ensure that you are absorbed with the department. You know, you're given a PSAL number, UTE.
So I don't work for the Department of Education.
Yeah.
In fact, in more than anything, I engage them very robustly, and I think they kind of don't like that. But
no one
we
would
have to
like
do.
you if you're robust. and you know what? You say it the way it is.
We have to, right? But here's the thing: the Department of Education, they keep on telling you they don't have money.
Yeah.
So that's why you'll see in a lot of our schools, there's not enough personnel. You'll notice that when educators are exiting the system, especially those that are retiring, they're not being replaced, okay? Because the department, and I sit on these finance committees in the province, they don't have money. They tell you they don't have money. If you know, in the last financial year, 1.4 billion was cut off from the education budget in this province itself. So there's that, and for whatever reason that's happening, I think that's a political one, and I don't think it's for this show, but you guys know what I'm talking about there. But let's bring it back to, so as a result, schools are understaffed and under-resourced, okay? So you got failing infrastructure, you got like the school things that are breaking and you don't have the money to repair it, you've got no staff, or you got very little staff. People are sitting with high numbers in their classes. I mean, the ideal thing for you to be sitting with would be about 30 kids in your class.
People are going right up to 60, 70.
Right. 30 kids in your class, you'll be able to teach them, you'll be able to deliver quality education. That's not happening, all right? Because like minimum 50. And that's true. In some cases, it's dropped slightly because you got 1 or 2 additional SGB educators that are carrying the load. So there's no money. So you're under-resourced, you're understaffed, you have a failing infrastructure, and then you couple that with the fact that a lot of people don't pay school fee. If you go to a school and you ask the school, tell me, what is your recovery rate? You've got 700 kids here, all right, or you've got 500 kids here. What is your recovery rate percentage-wise? How many percent of school fee are you collecting? And I think any school that collects 50% is damn lucky.
True.
Because there are schools that are
Free.
getting just 20% of the school fee in, 30% of the school fee in, 40% of the school fee in. Now, how do you run a school and provide effective deliverance of education? You have to pay all these SGB educators. You have to repair and do this. How do you do all of that when you don't have the funds to do it? You know, if your expenses at home is 1,000 rand, but you're only bringing 400 rand home at the end of the month, you're never going to meet your expenses. So as a result, what's going to happen is some things are going to be neglected. And more often than not, it's the infrastructure, it's the plant, it's the grass is unkept and uncut, it's this, it's that. We got large class sizes because we can't afford another educator to come in. So it impacts on education. Well,
there's a couple hot questions coming up now. The next question, before we touch the Bella Bill, they even mentioned about the Bella Bill, but why are... No. This is a good question. How can SGB positively support the growth of a school? This is so important.
Look, as an SGB, your whole function is to support the growth of the school. Because if you got in as an SGB in year 2021 and you're exiting in year 2024 and you've done nothing to grow that school, you've basically wasted 3 years of your life there. You're never going to get that back.
You just have something to put it on your CV.
You're never going to get that back, okay? So the whole idea is that when you get onto governing bodies and you are now kind of affiliated to a school, because that's how it is, right? Your whole perception, your whole ideology Your whole thinking, the capacity that you have must be for the development and growth of that school. And that includes everything,
Yeah.
from the growth of the people that are there, okay, to the growth of the learners that are there, but also the developing the plant
Of all
itself.
of that.
So
That's so important.
That's what your
And
function is.
the next question, and this is from a principal. Amazingly, educators think that principals get along very well with governing bodies, but principals, some of them also feel under pressure by the governing bodies where they feel that they're dictating. The importance, whose authority is greater, chairperson of the SGB versus a principal at a full SGB meeting?
It's a
How will it
simple one to answer.
impact on decision making?
It's a simple one. If you're a principal of a school, you are a department official
Yeah.
and deployee. But when you sit at a governing body meeting, you are an ordinary member of the governing body. The only person that has special powers at the governing body is the chairperson of the governing body. And in terms of the act, the chair and the vice chair must be a parent. Okay? So a parent will chair or vice chair the governing body, chair and vice chair the governing body, right? But you're a principal, which means that you will speak from an academic point of view. You'll inform everybody about what's happening with the school, but that's your function.
Yeah.
You don't carry any specific decision-making power, functions or powers. Neither do you carry any authority. Okay? Because remember, when you say in a governing body, we discuss an issue, and if we are split on that decision, we go for a vote.
Yeah.
And if we go for a vote and we vote in a particular way, that decision that we've reached, that's the final decision.
Exactly.
Not coming out of it, and I think I alluded to this earlier, not coming out of it, and then as a principal, I don't agree with that decision, so I'm not going to implement it. No, as I said earlier, if it's legal and if it's within the ambit of what you are doing and ambit of the law, you may not like that decision, but at the end of the day, it's a decision made by the governing body, which you have to abide by.
The next question is a hot question. It's all over social media. It's been going on. The Bella Act is going to eradicate
The Bella
powers
Bill, yeah.
of the SGB, especially language. There's a whole lot. And I feel parents need to, go online, check what's going on.
Yeah.
There's been fake things on social media to say that it's been passed. No, it's not been passed.
No, there's consultations are still happening.
So looking at the language policy, there's this knowing our province, knowing everything. So can you give us a little bit about that?
Look, there's two ways to look at the language policy, right? Some schools, like I'll give you an example now, right? Let's say you move to an area in Vereeniging. You're now going to a school that's an Afrikaner school.
Yeah.
You're going to be all lost. So the idea is to ensure that the language policy is consistent with the law of the land, in a sense where that there is not a what do you call this? There's not a decision, or there's not a like kind of just saying, okay, this is what it is and that's what it is and then that's it. So it's giving the HOD, it's giving the Department of Education a say in the language policy of a school, so that the school doesn't pronounce itself to be of a certain caliber or a certain language, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make it all inclusive.
Yeah.
But remember, these are all subjected to consultation.
Well, there's a message coming on. Great show, mashallah. Thanks, Mr. V. Gani. Nafisa Hassan, now understanding what is the governing body. Sister Amina, thanks for detailed explanation. Another message is from Amira, parent component. I'm definitely going to sit on a governing body now that you explained it. But this is the truth. Parents don't understand. They have that fear. And I'm saying it the way it is, especially if you're a parent going in a school where you are not the common race or culture or religion there. So you're a bit afraid, or
but Sumaya, here's the thing, right? The Schools Act is in common law, so it's not a race specific or gender specific. It's not. It's common, and I'd encourage parents to get involved, because when you get involved in governance, you get involved in governing bodies, you learn a lot. Okay. And we're always here to teach. So I'm sure this is not the first time.
Well,
this is not the first time on your show.
Exactly. Well, you are like a governing body association on your own, from macro to national. I mean, when I first met you, like I think 15 years ago, you were at the MECs at Olive Convention Center. You were representing there.
Yeah.
And you're always lending
I
your
spoke there, I
services.
think.
Yes, you did. And what I liked about you, you called a spade. And
No, we
you
have
like
to.
you create that robust, that interaction. Your parting words, advice to our principals out there, to our especially our parents out there.
So let's take it like this, right? Let's start with the principals first. With principals, and if you're out there, look, make sure that you work with your governing body.
Yeah.
Make sure that you consult widely with them, because remember, if you earn the trust of the governing body, your school will flourish.
Yeah.
If you're a principal that wants to be the boss, and I put that in inverted commas, okay? And if you want to be the boss and you want to dictate what everybody needs to do and how they need to do it and this and that, and you don't capacitate anybody, you set for doom. Because at the end of the day is that, remember, you're not going to have a pleasant trip, because there's going to be one bright spark sitting in the governing body who's going to take you to task.
Exactly.
Okay? So if you are a principal, you have to ensure that you consult, work with them, work for the common good, the greater good.
That's it.
Okay? Empower them.
Thank you so much.
If you're a parent, get onto the governing body, get elected, make a positive contribution. Don't get there because you want to create kind of trouble and you want no. Look, you can ask about anything. You're entitled to. You can ask about anything. Nobody can tell you, oh, you've been silly or you've been stupid or don't ask. No, you can ask about anything, because the more you empower yourself, the better your foundation of knowledge is going to be, right?
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking your time to be here with us as our guest this evening, our technician Mondi for making the show possible. My email address is sumayakhan.alansar@outlook.com. Responsibility. Be dependable. Hold yourself accountable. Do the right thing. Apologize when you make a mistake. Do your best work. Complete what you set out to do. And remember integrity. Taking responsibility is a commitment to your life, to yourself, to leadership, greater, and freedom. Assalamu alaikum.